One of the big stories over the past couple months has been the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act. This is a story that isn't going away anytime soon, but certainly came into focus last week when the California State Athletic Commission unanimously passed a motion to formally endorse said act. All 6 voting members voted in support. A lot of talk going into it, a lot of talk coming out of it. Here to talk about it is the California State Athletic Commission Executive Director, also the Chairman of the Rules Committee of the Association of Boxing Commissions, and a Hall of Famer in his own right. The one and only Andy Foster is kind enough to join us on this Tuesday afternoon. Hello, Andy. How are you?
Hi, Ariel. Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. It's a great privilege, and I really appreciate it. And this is obviously a huge topic. And just in the interest of full disclosure, I appreciate you reaching out, wanting to maybe clear the air and talk about this as best as you could. And so thank you for that. Could I ask why? Why did you feel the need to perhaps have this opportunity to talk about it on the show?
There's a tremendous amount of misinformation about what the bill does. There's a tremendous amount of negativity around a bill that will absolutely help boxing in this country. So I think it's important to explain to the public exactly what the bill does and what the bill doesn't do, because the current system of boxing is not going away. This provides fighters just a choice, another alternative for them. But the biggest thing for me that this bill does and why it's so important that this bill addresses the 4, 6, and 8 round fighters that were not addressed the first time in the sense that there is a minimum purse requirement and a minimum insurance requirement and minimum medical requirements for every boxer in this country. Now, California exceeds these standards, but many states do not. And many states don't even have a minimum purse. So these are important when you're talking about the number of boxers just cumulatively that this bill will help. It's important to have insurance. It's important to have some, even if it's a small check, leaving from the fight. And it's important to be reasonably medically cleared before you compete. These are important things that are in the bill.
Do you believe, Andy, that is the genuine motivation behind the bill? Do you think that is the reason why we are here today talking about it? Because obviously there was no great push to amend or, introduce any type of changes to it. And obviously what has been brought up time and again is that here comes TKO, here comes, ZUFFA boxing, and they want to change it to make boxing seem a lot more like the UFC. And we could get into what exactly that means. Do you think that is the genuine motivation, or do you think that there are other reasons why they are so, firmly behind this new bill?
Well, I think that obviously that they're wanting to create a league system. It looks like a league, more or less.
Like the UFC, right?
Like the UFC, where the biggest thing that I think that they're wanting to do is get away from the sanctioning organization so they don't have to go through the rating system. And the 4-belt system, we can get into that if you'd like to.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it.
Well, that's the part of it.
Okay.
It's not the huge part. That is the part of it.
Okay.
So that's what the bill does. That's the big difference. The other piece, and I guess the other side of it, is the controlling of both sides of the card, like having both sides of the card. By that, I mean right now in the thing is the promoter will control, will have the A side, and the B side fighter is being brought in to lose. Okay, that's what's happening in boxing almost every weekend. Is the promoter's fighter will be, and you'll have an opponent. That's what they're called in boxing, the opponent, or however you want to say it. And they're usually an unsigned fighter that just shows up and is pretty good, can compete, gives the fighter rounds, they call it, and whatever. But then they move them up the ladder. and hopefully they move up the rankings until they get to the pinnacle, and then they fight a big championship fight at the end. Okay, that's what the current four belt system. That's what we see. The financial incentive in a league type format would be that since you have both sides of the card, you want to have the most competitive fights possible. It's a financial incentive is to bring the public back to watch it, because the idea is to have good fights. The idea is to make sure the fights are most competitive, because you don't really care who loses, because you've got both fighters under contract under your league type system, and that's probably the biggest difference. And the ratings organizations, there's four tracks that you can go. There's four tracks that you can go with the current sanctioning organizations. You can do WBA, WBO, IBF, or WBC, and they're all very similar top tracks. And you will move up the rankings depending on who you fight, and the promoters. Different promoters really associate with a lot of times with different sanction organizations, but a lot of times everybody works with everybody, and you will move up that way. But once a year, you have mandatories in that organization if you're the champion. So you'll often see big fighters being stripped of their belt because they just can't fight. If they have multiple belts, you can't fight that many times, because another fight might make more financial sense or whatever. So really just having a system where the best fighter will fight the best fighter, and then they will rise without having to ask permission from a different group on the ratings, or in some cases 4 different groups, is beneficial to boxing, because we're not seeing always the best fights that could be made. Pacquiao Mayweather, I felt like happened too late. There's fight after fight that I think the public would like to see. And then there's been a proliferation of titles. There's been a 404% increase in the number of titles issued since 1996. That has created confusion among the public. The public doesn't know who the champion is in many of the weight classes. And there are 17 weight classes, or 18 in the WBC, but 17 weight classes. So it's difficult for the public to follow exactly who the champion is, because often the champion is different. Sometimes it's not, but often the champion's different in each track.
One thing that has been brought up is like, we're going to clean it up. It's going to be, one system where the best are fighting the best. But is it not true, Andy, that in essence, boxing would be introducing a new belt? It would actually be introducing a 5th belt, because this ZUFFA belt, they have said they're going to bring in this ZUFFA belt, and we're gonna have this belt be defended on our shows, and we're not gonna play with others. We're not gonna have co-promotions. We're not gonna have a WBC/ZUFFA unification bout, which would then introduce another belt. And look, I just had Boots Ennis on the program. Boots Ennis is vying for a fight against Virgil Ortiz. If Boots Ennis is a ZUFFA fighter, he can't even think of a Virgil Ortiz fight because he's a Golden Boy fighter. So doesn't that restrict everything even more? Because this is not news to you. Every notable boxing person that I've spoken to, from the likes of Boots, from the likes of Danny Garcia last week, Eddie Hearn, Oscar De La Hoya, they have all said, we're not going to play by these rules. We like the old way. We like being able to co-promote. Am I saying that boxing, or am I believing them that boxing is perfect? Absolutely not. But wouldn't this actually make it more restrictive than this, sort of like utopic system that everyone's going to be playing under one umbrella with one belt on the line? It seems like the sport is too old. It's been going on for over 100 years. It seems to me like, the train has already left that station. It's going to be very hard to reverse course and make it more of an MMA model, if you will, a UFC model specifically.
You're right in that this has been going on for 100 years. You're right about that. And really since we saw a proliferation of the titles, but this is an option. Okay? No boxer has to do that, do this track. But I think it's fair to say that the UFC is clearly the most successful MMA promoter that's ever been. And if the people over there at TKO or whoever decide to get into this space, they're going to bring the same degree of promotion to boxing. And I believe that the fighters will be able to choose. Nobody's making the people do this, and I don't think somebody like Boots Ennis is really who. The way I view this at the beginning would be more like a developmental league, probably something like the Contender Series or something to start with. I don't think that they're going to jump in feet first with a UBO system into the four belt system. I don't think they're trying to. I don't know what they're exactly. I mean, I've not asked them, but that's not the way I envision it. I envision it being, building up, signing good fighters if they want to come over there. And the other groups in the four belt system will be just fine. I don't think this changes boxing that much.
So how does it work?
I do believe that the best fighting the best, or the people, and with the media that they're bringing with Paramount and the whole thing, I believe that it will put boxing back on TV. I mean, Ariel, I'd be remiss to say, I mean, in California and across this country, really, in the period of 7 years, we've lost four of the major broadcasters that funded boxing. We've lost HBO, we've lost Showtime, we've lost Fox, and we've lost ESPN. Broadcasting money is really what finances boxing. And without that investment in the product, the boxers are not going to have the exposure or the dollars to fight and be seen and to be paid.
And by the way, for the audience, UBO stands for Unified Boxing Organization, so a more unified front. How would it work? Because I've heard Dana say this as well, like, hey, you can go with this one or you could go with the old Ali Act, if you will. Is that even possible? Like, how could a fighter choose under sort of like what legislation they're fighting under? Like, isn't there just one set and that's it? Like, you make an amendment to it and that's what it is? How could there be two? And wouldn't that make things even more confusing, more muddying of the waters?
I don't think so. I mean, it's you.
How do you choose? How would that work?
You would just sign the contract that you're going to be under the UBO. And there's limits to these contracts. They're not indefinite. But you would sign with that you're going to work with the UBO, and you're guaranteed insurance at that point. You're guaranteed all the medicals paid for. These are things that are required, and this isn't just ZUFFA; it's any UBO.
Mm-hmm.
Or the four belt system, you can go do that, and you have to move up the rankings. And one of the things that one of the big stark differences, because I regulate both sports, and you look at, is if you're a championship or near championship level in boxing and you take a loss, your earning potential and your pay is dramatically lowered the next fight. It's just so much lower. If you take a loss in when UFC was doing it, we did a lot of the Bellators also. When you take a loss, you don't see the earnings of the next fight often dramatically reduced. They don't penalize like that. And part of that, I think, is in boxing, you lose the rankings, you go down the rankings, and you have to work your way back up. And the UFC, they just will put you back in if you fought good. It's the way it is. I mean, I think of people like Jim Miller and people like that. I mean, that always fight good. Everybody's excited to watch them. They just keep fighting.
Would you agree with the sentiment that the Ali Act, over the last 25 or so years, one of its benefits has been stopping a sort of monopoly of boxing, a promoter from coming in? There was talk of PBC wanting to come in and they want to control the whole thing. They want to be on every single network. They're going to time buy. And it has precluded any promoter, any businessman from monopolizing boxing. And wouldn't that be a benefit? Wouldn't that be a good thing, as opposed to what we've seen in the sport of MMA, which, I'm not going to say that the UFC is a monopoly. They're the big dog. They created the sport for all intents and purposes here in North America. But there was just a class action lawsuit that was settled, a sort of acknowledgement that perhaps the fighters weren't getting paid what they were owed, and and here's a model that is trying to be replicated in another sport when that model was just, taken to court in a class action lawsuit, and there are other pending, lawsuits. And so wouldn't we want that? Wouldn't we want a system that would preclude any type of monopolization of promotions for the boxers' benefits?
Well, I mean, boxing is not going to be monopolized. There's way too many fighters under contract with PBC, with Golden Boy's got a bunch, Matchroom's got a bunch, Top Rank has a bunch. There's just a lot of talent that's spread out, and I think that the fact that this UBO model can be used by anybody, it's not exclusive to ZUFFA boxing, would also prohibit the idea of some kind of monopoly or whatever. The monopoly, the fact of the matter is we have lost 4 networks in the last 7 years. The number of titles issued is up 404% since 1996. And the public does not know who the champions are in many of these weight classes. It's hard to make unification fights. The sanction fees, in my view, are I would like to see them. I would like to see the sanction fees lowered on the fighters, if possible. I would like to see the belt fee waived on the fighters, if possible. There are a lot of things that are, and I would like to see the promoter fee also reduced by the sanctioning bodies on the promoters, so that we could have more of these promotions done. Without the broadcast money, Ariel, we are seeing more and more purse bids, more and more. Okay, and I've got a fight that's coming up in December. It's a cruiserweight fight. I think it's the Bodo Jack fight. I think that's what it is. But it's Steve Bash got that. I believe it was $301,000 cumulative for that fight. It's a world title fight. We just had one. Sean Gibbons bid it on it and got it. He's not going to put it here, but he got it, and it's a world title fight, Ariel. $30,000, $19,500 for the champion, $8,500, I think, and then you got to pay the sanction fees. I tell you this to let you know that this idea that, and hear me when I tell you, because absent the very, very elite Crawford and Canelos, there's a few. Absent that, the idea that boxers are now making a lot more than MMA fighters or UFC fighters in particular is false. That is a fairy tale. It's a fable. It's being told, and it's being told and told and told. It's not true. It's just not true. I got the numbers. I looked at them. You've got the numbers. I sent you some of them.
Mm-hmm. What about the breakdown of the pie, though?
Well, I don't have that information, Ariel. I mean, you're talking about total revenue? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
The total revenue?
The breakdown of the pie. Every single boxer that I've talked to, every single promoter that I've talked to said, hey, like, we're giving them 80%, 70%. Now, obviously, the top dog is going to get more of that and it trickles down, as opposed to in MMA, let's be kind and say it's 30-70 the other way, right? I mean, that's a fact as well. So what about that breakdown? Why would anyone want it to go the other way?
Well, I'm not suggesting. Look, when you talk about that, when you're talking about the promotion piece of it, it costs money to promote the athletes. Now that group in Las Vegas, the UFC, if we're talking about ZUFFA boxing, mm-hmm. or UFC, they're very good at promoting. They can promote their athletes. They can take people that nobody's ever heard of and make them stars. That's what they do. Now, when it comes to the purses, I would agree that years ago, that probably a decade ago, maybe a little less, probably boxers were making more than UFC fighters, at least for the most part. But there has been a continual rise in MMA purses, specifically from the UFC, specifically over the last about 8 years. You keep seeing them go up and up and up. The last one I had And by the way, this doesn't even count the bonuses that they give out or the pay-per-view points or how all that works. I'm talking about just the persons that are disclosed to the state athletic commissions. And I obviously don't have the total revenue piece of how it all of all of their revenue versus their expenses or whatever. That's easily available. They're a publicly traded company. It's an SEC filing. John Nash always does a good job throwing that stuff out, and I read that sometimes. But I don't have that right in front of me. But I do know that this idea that, just from what I see, this idea that MMA fighters or UFC fighters in particular make less than boxers is not true. That's not true.
In
with the exception of the big ones.
In the September hearing where you guys talked about this, California State Athletic Commission, I remember the conclusion being there was going to be a fact-finding mission and you would reconvene in December to vote on it. That got moved up to last week's vote, October 15th, and that seemed to have caught a lot of people by surprise. Why did that happen?
The chairman moved that piece up because the subcommittee was actively seeking out people that had so many meetings, and I think the subcommittee was ready to submit its findings.
Do you understand why people would say, from an optics standpoint, that seemed a little bit out of the ordinary? It seemed a little bit strange that it got moved up, and I think it was on 7 days' notice.
No, it was on 12 or 14 days notice, Ariel. It's
okay.
A 10-day requirement in California.
Okay.
Anyway, for a notice.
Regardless, that's like
items get moved up all the time. If people don't know, you got to pay attention to the meetings. Things get moved around, get pushed back. The agenda changes all the time from meeting to meeting. Even where we're having our next meeting got changed just the other day. So these things happen all the time.
Were you surprised that it didn't seem like any prominent boxers of today or yesteryear, prominent promoters of today or yesteryear? I understand that Tom Loeffler was there. He was in favor of it. I know that he is a promoter. I don't know if anyone would say prominent. You know the ones that I'm talking about, that none of them were on the call. Was that surprising at all to you? Were you expecting, a lot of the people that were for it and opposed to it, let's be honest, were either MMA fighters or people who are affiliated with TKO/ZUFFA?
Well, Tom Loeffler, I would say is very prominent. I mean, he promoted the Klitschko brothers. He promoted Triple G.
Currently, right now, he's also the guy who has promoted, fights on UFC Fight Pass. Obviously, he's in a business relationship with them. Let's not kid ourselves. There was no De La Hoya. There was no Hearn. There was no Dimitri Salita. There was no Nikisa Bedarian or any of those guys.
Notice they weren't there, Ariel. They weren't there.
I'm asking you. Yes, I'm saying why. Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I think, I don't know. I think that if they wanted to voice their opinion, they had two opportunities to do so.
Why do you think that is? Because I'm sure you've seen the clips of people talking about it. I asked Oscar about it. Did you see Oscar talking about it in my interview with him?
I saw parts of it. I sure did. They actually sent it to me. That's why I texted you. Yeah. They sent it to me. Yeah, I don't know why look, the commissioners, we see these guys pretty much every weekend. I don't know why they didn't show up to the meeting and support or oppose it. I noticed that there was no really, I didn't recall any prominent boxers that are active showing up either. I can't recall that, but I did recall a lot of MMA fighters that had been in the past.
Right.
I recall some of them, and there were several promoters. I wouldn't call them. I think, to use your term, I don't think they would be prominent promoters, but several promoters who I had no idea who they were before that call showed up to support that.
Sure.
Support the thing.
What I thought was interesting were the MMA fighters who were opposed to it, because initially I was like, well, why do they care so much? This is essentially a boxing story. But then as I began to think and research, my sense is that, and I think you know this, MMA fighters have long wanted a sort of Ali act to come to MMA so that they could fight for other belts and that there could be a Francis Ngannou versus a John Jones or a Tom Aspinall where organizations could co-promote. And so they're trying to, to stop this from happening. I thought that was a really interesting development. Did you see it the same way? When you have a guy like Matt Brown, who has no real skin in the game at this point, he's retired, he's so passionate about a bill that would only really affect boxers at this point. To me, I thought that was really interesting, and it reminded me that MMA has long wanted a version of the Ali Act to come over to this side of the fence, and it has never happened, thus stopping certain things from happening that boxers are able to enjoy.
Well, I know what you're talking about. I'm also passionate about trying to help the boxers, and I believe that this bill will do that. Ariel, I believe I'm right on this. I believe the commission's right on this. We've evaluated this bill for hours and hours, and we've lost. I keep talking about we've lost 4 networks. I don't think that we can. I don't think that should be discounted. That's big because we used to have HBO Boxing or Showtime Boxing or ESPN or Fox almost every Friday or Saturday night. It used to be just a common thing here in California. We still have tons and tons of club shows, but the broadcast numbers are down. They're not in boxing anymore. And without that money that are being brought to boxing by the broadcasters, by the way, the broadcaster provisions in the Professional Boxing Act of 1996. That's how entrenched they were into boxing 25, 30 years ago, and that prohibition. So when you talk about losing those networks and that streaming, along with the splintering of the thing. I mean, I sent you the chart. I don't know if you read it, but we went from almost an entirely linear system in 2018 to an almost entirely, I guess now totally streaming system in 2025. That's a big shift in the way the entertainment is received by the public.
But isn't that a sign of the times, Andy? That's a sign of the times. I mean, Netflix is the biggest platform in the world, and they just had a boxing event in September, and they'll have another one in November. DAZN is an app that has, a lot of boxing on it. And let's be honest, I don't think that HBO and Showtime got out of the boxing business because they weren't interested in boxing. They got out of the sports business. Showtime Sports doesn't exist. HBO Sports doesn't exist anymore. I know. I used to work for them. I worked on a show called Real Sports with Brian Gumbel. That show doesn't exist. Sports doesn't exist there anymore. A couple of documentaries here and there. There was a time where ESPN got out of the boxing business. They got back into it with Top Rank. Who's to say they don't get back into it now? And there's new players, as you said. Paramount is in it. Netflix is in it. DAZN is in it. And so, I don't think it's necessarily an indictment on the boxing business that these players are out of it. It sucks. It hurts. But the fact that we're on streaming and apps, I think, is more of a sign of the times, no? I mean, the NBA is about to debut tonight on Peacock, for goodness sakes.
You're 100% correct, Ariel. I couldn't agree with you more that it is a sign of the times. So you're right about that. But the amount of investment in the sport has not caught up. If that makes sense. So there's not as much money as there used to be to spread around to the fighters, and the fighters are being forced to take lower purses than they're used to. They're like I said, we just did the purse bid. It's coming here, and you're seeing more and more purse bids that are happening than before. I mean, we were just at lunch, and I think the IBF was doing one, and it got canceled because I think they're close to coming to an agreement. So it got pushed back for a week. But I don't know if that makes sense to you, but there's not the same amount of investment in boxing as there was 10 years ago from the networks.
Without beating around the bush, you're a straight shooter. I like to treat you that way. I think one of the big concerns is that this bill seems so closely aligned with TKO, with the lobbyists, with the stakeholders involved. Do you have any concerns about that? Do you have any concerns about how close it seems to be aligned? Everyone in support is an ally. Everyone who is not in support is not an ally. Everyone who's talking on the call in support are major power players. It does ring some alarms, I would say, in a lot of people's minds, where the organization wants to get into the world of boxing and all of a sudden wants to make these changes. Does that not feel like a fair assessment in your opinion? This is a TKO-backed amendment, right? This is a TKO-backed bill.
Yes, I think that's correct. I don't think that's any kind. I don't think anybody's trying to. I think they're supportive of this bill. Yes, I absolutely think that they are.
Does that lead you to ask some questions? Does that lead you to wonder about what the motives are behind it?
No, because I've told you already on this call, it's to avoid the ratings organizations. That's what I believe is the paramount reason. They do not need to want it. They don't want to ask permission from one of the sanction organizations to make a fight.
Right.
They're not used to doing business that way. They want to be able to make this guy is going to fight this guy without asking permission. You can't wait around for 60 days and wait for this stuff to ask these things. Now, look, the four belt system has worked. Some people would say well, some people would say less well. I wish there was less belts because the public would probably, maybe some less belts because the public would probably know who the champion was better. But as we move along, I think that the reason was the ratings. I think that they want to be able to rate their own fighters and give their own belts and make their own matches because they'll have both sides of the card. That's what I believe.
And do you agree with that? Do you like that?
Yeah, I do. I think
really. But Andy, you come from MMA. I mean, we can't see Francis Ngannou fight Tom Aspinall. We can't see these co-promoted fights in MMA. You know that, right? So why would you want that system in boxing?
You very rarely. I mean, it takes the stars to align for it to happen in boxing.
Not these days. Not since Turkey got involved. Let's be honest. I mean, what big fight hasn't been made in the last 2 years?
Well, Ariel, when we talk about policy for California, which is what I care about, okay, we've lost 4 networks. I can't base the decisions, and I don't feel like the commissioners can base the decisions on what His Excellency Mr. Turkey Al-Sheikh wants to do with boxing.
No, my point is he clearly has been able to make the big fights because he has, incredible funds backing him. And so big fights can be made. It doesn't seem like any of these sanctioning bodies are standing in the way of any of these big fights from being made. Usyk and Fury fought twice over the past year.
That's right. That's right. But like I said,
Beterbiev and Bivol couldn't get made for 10 years, and then all of a sudden he came along and they fought twice in the span of 4 or 5 months. So I don't think it was necessarily that. I think it was just money that wasn't being thrown, enough money for these fighters. I don't know if it was necessarily the sanctioning bodies.
Well, then wasn't Bivol supposed to fight? Didn't that get ordered that he was going to fight Benavidez? Didn't that get ordered?
After the 2 fights.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And didn't he have the belt at that time? But then when he didn't take it, he's out of the ratings now.
Oh, yeah. All this is kind of a mess. I'm just saying, at least we got those 2 fights. If we're going under the UBO model, a guy who fights under Top Rank and a guy who fights under Matchroom isn't fighting each other. There's not even a question. Like, I would never sit here and talk about, I don't know, a guy in PFL fighting a guy in the UFC because there's just no point. It's not happening. It's not even going to be discussed.
Okay. Well, I mean, nobody, Ariel, is making the public watch this. Okay. I believe that this system will attract the public to watch it. I believe that UFC and ZUFFA are good at promoting. They've already showed that they're good at promoting. And if people want to watch their product, people will watch their product. I believe that they will do a good job for the fighters. And I believe that this bill, look, it raises the floor across the whole country for poor people. We should talk about that because I was one of those lower income people there for a while fighting, and it's no good. You go up to them bars in Tennessee where they've got boxing rings set up and there's smoke all in the air, and you fight. There's them 4-round boxing matches that you're in the corner for, and you walk out of there with $50 or $100. That's happening. The dollar contracts are happening in this country. They're absolutely happening. We passed a regulation, and I sent you the initial statement of reasons about that, that showed that, where we moved the purse up to $100 in 16, and then Governor Newsom moved it up to $200 through legislation that the commission endorsed in 2024. So there's a lot of pros to the bill, a lot of pros. Mm-hmm. And the biggest pro is
per round.
Fighters are able to choose. They're able to choose this. It's a choice. You can choose whether you want to work with this group, and if you do, you're going to get a lot of benefits. But if you don't, you can stay in the current system, and if perhaps get signed to one of the major promoters, and you'll move up the rankings that way.
I think that's probably the most important thing that people need to recognize, because I believe it when you say it. You say that these two bills will exist, and if you want to be Boots Ennis 10 years ago and say, I want to hold the WBC title because that's the belt Muhammad Ali once held, you could go down that path, and there'll be nothing that will stop you from doing that. And this won't abolish that system, but there'll be this other model that will make things a lot more unified and won't have to adhere to those rankings or those belts, and will be able to create their own belt. Is that a fair way to break it down?
It is, Ariel, and remember, this bill, it only applies to this country. I'm talking about the United States.
Yeah, of course.
Okay?
So does the Ali
And
Act.
so, but the World Boxing Council and the World Boxing Organization, the IBF,
Yeah.
the WBA, those are legitimate worldwide organizations. They have boxers from all around the world. Okay, so I view this bill and this belt real similar to like the NABF in the sense that, but it doesn't include Canada, Mexico. It's the United States, and this bill applies to the United States. And if a boxer decides they want to go, they want to take, they want to move up the rankings, they absolutely can, just like you said. And if they want to go down this route, they can go down this route. But the boxers are able to be given a choice, and choices are good. Investment in boxing is good. TV is good, and like. Nick Khan is on TKO, on the board of TKO, and I don't know Nick Khan. I met him one time for like 3 minutes. I don't know him, but I know a lot of people in boxing that know him. And he's one of those guys I've never heard, like nobody I've ever talked to had a bad thing to say about the guy. And he's involved in this boxing venture. And so you've got like real pros that are coming in that are going to be doing this. Now, obviously, they're in a business. They have an obligation to make money for their shareholders. But while they do it, they're going to raise the sport of boxing up, and they're going to make fighters money as well. That's what's going to happen if the bill passes. And every boxer in this country, whether they're in Iowa, Mississippi, wherever the places are that are fighting those smaller fights right now, are going to get benefited by having insurance and a minimum purse.
John McCarthy on the call last week said anyone who opposes the bill has a financial reason to do so. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think that some people have a financial interest to oppose the bill. I think that, but I think some people are just not educated as to what the bill does. This bill is not repealing the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act of 2000. If you want to go down that path, you can. Mm-hmm. That bill didn't really impact the 4s, 6s, and 8s like this bill is going to. Like this bill, if it's signed into law, this bill automatically raises the floor across this whole country. And just that reason alone, because I don't know, Ariel, if you know, boxing can be exploitive. It can be exploitive, especially to really, really low income people. We've had like I kept mentioning to you, we had the dollar contracts going on here. Mm-hmm. And I kept looking at those, and we'd see a dollar come across, a dollar. It's like, what is happening? What was happening was the promoters were giving the fighters tickets to sell, and that's how they would make their purse. And if they would get so much, and they'd turn the rest in. And I know club shows do that all across this country. I promoted a bunch of shows. I did that myself. And I sold tickets as a fighter. I did that a bunch of times. I'm not opposed to fighters being able to sell tickets. I'm not opposed to that at all. But you should have some kind of minimum as well. You shouldn't rely on just the tickets that you sell as your purse. You should be focused mainly on fighting and less on selling tickets.
I wanted to ask you about a tweet from Chris Cyborg. Chris Cyborg tweeted last week, if the Muhammad Ali Act was applied to MMA, I would be undisputed world champion at 145, or I would have earned my rematch with Amanda Nunes. Promoters owning championship belts and being able to leverage them to force fighters into long-term contracts below market value is not in the fighter's best interest. What do you make of that statement?
Well, I mean, boxing is the only sport that has a separate ratings organization. Okay. well, I mean, I guess kickboxing does in some respects with ISKA and IKF, but
I would argue
for the
MMA is
most,
the only sport that doesn't have one.
well, bare knuckle doesn't have
Well, yeah, I
one.
mean,
Kickboxing really
slap
doesn't
fighting.
have one to speak of. Um, and I sent you the sanction fees. I've sent that to you. You've seen them. Okay. If I'm not sure that people know exactly what these fighters are paying for that, but like you had that fight that I sent you. It was $1 million fight. Now, that wasn't unification, so that was a bit odd. But what was it, like $280,000 in fees, something like that, on $1.5 million purse cumulative? That's not insignificant. That's a good bit. Of course, that's across the promoter and the fighter. But I think that I don't know if I agree with that statement. I think that you got to have all the information, and I sit here day in, day out with it. And I'm telling you, Ariel, this bill's good. This bill's good. It's good for boxing. It's going to bring investment to boxing, and it's not going to do anything to the four belt system. And there's nothing going to harm Golden Boy or Top Rank or none of the rest of them. But it's going to bring another group into boxing.
Yeah, no, that is the top line thing. I think what everyone is wondering is, why does a new group want to, exact these changes? I did want to ask you about, and I understand you don't have your whole day to speak to us, and I know you're a very busy man, so I'm going to let you go very quickly, I promise. Just this one tweet from Nico Ali Walsh, the grandson of Muhammad Ali, because Lonnie Ali, the widow of Muhammad Ali, has been quoted in press releases and on these calls. This is what the grandson of Muhammad Ali had to say: "Anyone who truly knew my grandfather knows he'd never support this revival act. Legacy isn't about last name, it's about principles. I stand with my grandfather's principles. If you're not a fighter, don't speak for us. It's disappointing the CSAC is backing this."
Yeah, he's entitled to his opinion. Everybody's entitled to your opinion. That's why we live where we live. By the way, congratulations on the Toronto Blue Jays.
Oh, yes.
Mention that.
Yeah. You rooting for us?
Yeah.
To take down those dastardly Dodgers?
I was rooting for you.
Oh, I appreciate that.
I'm not a baseball guy, but I was rooting for you.
You can't say that you're rooting for the Jays. I understand, considering where you live. It would be a faux pas.
Yeah.
But this is David versus Goliath.
Well, yeah. But I thought of you last night.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I understand. I'm asking you about a relationship between a grandfather and a grandson, and obviously one of the biggest names in the history of sport. But it is, to me, again, it's interesting when these types of sentiments come about. Can I ask you about one thing that has been brought to my attention? And again, you're a straight shooter, and you're the only one in the business that comes on here and talks about these things. And you can't, it's impossible for me to truly say how much we appreciate it. We really, really do. What has been suggested to me is, and I'm not going to beat around the bush when asking this, at some point, Mark Ratner is going to retire from the UFC, and the UFC wants Andy Foster to take over that job, and that's why he is backing this. Can you address that? Is that a real thing? Have you talked to them about this?
I've had a total of 0 conversations about that. 0. None whatsoever. So I'm backing this bill because this bill is good for boxing. We've lost 4 networks in the last 7 years. I agree with you that there is a transition happening in the industry. It'll probably catch up, but this bill is not going to harm Golden Boy, our biggest promoter. It's not going to harm Top Rank. It's not going to harm the other ones, but it's going to bring another place in the industry that will give California boxers a place to fight. I have 2 California babies. I'm from Georgia. They were born here. They go to school here. I'm very happy in California, and I've had no talks about that whatsoever.
Thank you.
This bill is a good bill, Ariel.
Would you be interested in that role?
Well, it's never been brought to my attention, and I hope Mark Ratner stays there another 10 years.
Okay. And lastly, for those that want to understand, this is dense stuff. We usually talk about the fun stuff. What are the next steps here, and how soon, could we see these next steps and potentially see this bill, get passed over in Washington?
Buddy, I don't really know exactly the legislative process with this government shutdown.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I would be speculative to ask. I think in the bill, doesn't it say the bill would take effect 30 days after the president's signature, though? So, I mean, that's what I think. I think it says that.
Do you think it could be a thing that comes into play come January? That's when ZUFFA boxing is going to kick off on Paramount, it seems.
Ariel, I mean, if I knew, I would tell you.
Okay.
I don't know. I'll tell you what I know, but I want to comment on one thing.
Please.
You tweeted, and somebody sent it to me because I don't do the Twitter thing, but
it's for the best.
Tweeted that the officiating is not approved in the last 20 years.
Oh, I'm so happy you brought this up. I really wanted to talk to you about this, but I understand I've taken up so much of your time. But please, if we can for just a few minutes, because I think it's been abhorrent as of late.
Well, it's been bad. There's no doubt about it. Okay. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We've had some issues.
Did you watch the card this past weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's been some issues. Okay. But Ariel, there's no doubt it's improved from 20 years ago. There's no doubt about that.
It's the same people. It's the same people.
I mean, and look, we had three people, or I mean, I'm talking about the industry, but there were three people in Vancouver that you guys had never seen before, okay, that engage in the training. I'm talking about referees. So that's part of it. But I agree with you that we have to expand the pool. We've got to expand the pool. Sal and Derek cannot judge every single fight in the world.
Right.
I agree with you about the pool.
Is the issue that they just don't get paid enough? Should they get paid more? What's the incentive? It's the worst job in the world. You would have to agree with that because it's a thankless job. If you do a great job, if you have a great night at the office, not a single person knows who you are. If you mess up, the world is coming for your neck because of gambling and all this stuff, and fighters are losing out on half their purse. And so it's thankless in the sense that you get all that heat and you're walking away with what? What like, could I ask, like, for a top level UFC 322 card, what is the top guy making for the main event as far as the referee is concerned? 1,500, 1,800? Yeah.
Maybe 3,000 or 4,000, something like that.
That's the top of the top, right?
Yeah, that's the top. Yeah.
What is a prelim guy getting?
I pay my guys the same here in California, but a lot of people pay them differently. So maybe 1,500 to 2,000, something like that.
And when you say the same, everyone gets the same top to bottom?
Yeah, I've stopped trying to separate that. I just take the top one and I just move it down.
So what is it, like 3 for the whole card? 3 each?
Oh, the judges make less. The referees, it seemed like maybe 2,800 last time and then 2,400 for the judges, something like that.
Okay. Do you think they should get more?
Well, you have to, the way I view it is you have to look at it kind of close to a boxing card. And boxing pays a little more than that. But frankly, we've not had any boxing cards near the size of the UFC in recent years because of what we've just talked about for 30 minutes or an hour, however long. So, but yeah, I think that it wouldn't hurt my feelings to see the officials get a little bit more money, but I don't think that's the driving thing on mistakes or whatever. I mean, look, I had Pat Russell. He had Bradley and I think it was Bradley and Vargas, but I can't remember. He had the same exact issue that Dan did in the World Championship fight here. Might have been 2015, something like that. He thought he heard the bell. He got in. Carl Moretti from Top Rank. I've never seen somebody get the ring so fast. He jumped up and Pat just made a mistake. So,
but that fight should have been stopped, right? The Kyle Nelson fight.
I mean, look, there was no problem with the stop. I mean,
yeah.
No, I think that was part of the confusion. Do you agree?
Absolutely. It was a good stoppage.
Yeah.
So why did it continue?
Yeah, that part, it shouldn't have happened. When it happened over here, it did happen in round 12 with like 10 seconds left or whatever. So it was
bizarre. And then a couple of weeks ago, we had a Jake Matthews fight against Neil Magny where the referee stops it and then he continues to fight because he's like, oh, the guy wasn't out.
Yeah.
And then what about the low blows in the Mike Malott fight? I mean, should a point be taken away?
Well, you can't, so they get 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Up to 5 minutes is what the rule. Up to 5.
Yeah.
Not 5 minutes. Up to 5.
Yep.
And if you're not ready at the 5 minute mark, that should be it. That should be the end.
Right. But he was ready. He continued a second shot below the belt. intentional or not. I hate this intentional, unintentional thing. I hate this. How are we supposed to know? Every shot, look, if a football player has a pass interference, he's not trying, but he's going to get penalized. He's going to get the 15 yards, and it's going to be where the play happened. Face mask, same thing. No one's trying to foul their opponent, but you kick at the same time as your opponent. You hit them below the belt. How many more warnings can we have? It's like,
I agree with you. I'm going to bring this up in the rules. I do. We've been talking about this for
enough of this. It's never intentional.
I agree with you.
So he continues to say to him, I know it's not intentional. Of course, Mike's a good guy, but still, a shot below the belt's a shot below the belt.
Yeah, you've got no argument here. I agree with you.
Yeah. And then like with the inconsistencies about sometimes there's a point deduction, sometimes there's not. I don't know. It just seems like a lot of the top dogs, I don't know if you saw this fight over in Dubai with Keith Peterson, not trying to pick on anyone, Paul Hughes, Usman Nurmagomedov, there were multiple shots below the belt. There was no, there was a headbutt at the end of the first round. It just seems like there's a lot of mistakes being made. And I get it. I would never want that job. I'm not saying I'm volunteering myself, but it just doesn't feel like it's getting any better.
Well, Ariel, it's a hard job. And
you
mentioned that piece of it. John McCarthy
he's coming back.
I don't know. He's probably going to have a lot of rotations and stuff. But I mean, the good thing about him is he's able to he's a really good referee.
Yeah, he's arguably the greatest of all time.
I think everybody would agree with that statement.
Yeah.
And and he'll be able to help the newer referees coming up and the whole thing like that. So I'm excited about the whole thing, but I look, it's a hard job. We keep training, we keep doing it, we keep working at it.
I know you guys are the best.
It's a hard job for these guys.
That's why I always say you're the gold standard. I wish all the commissioners and commissions were like you guys, and truthfully, that's why I was really looking forward to this conversation, and why some of the things discussed on the call last week were, of note to me and somewhat alarming. And then when I hear every single prominent guy on my show speak against it, I'm starting to wonder what's going on here. And so I hope you feel that this was fair and that we were able to clear up some things. And I really do appreciate the time and the transparency.
Yeah, well, thank you, Ariel.
Thank you, Andy. All the best to you. Thank you. All the best, and we'll talk to you soon. There he is, the great Andy Foster of the California State Athletic Commission, Executive Director, and a guy who I think came on and tried my best to ask all the pertinent questions. I know there's probably a million more that we can ask, but I didn't want to monopolize all of his time. And really, I would love to I always want to showcase and spotlight all sides of the equation. We don't have a dog in the race. I promise you. I am not rooting against anyone here. I mean, I didn't want to interrupt him there, but again, I've said this a million times. I used to work with Nick Khan. Nick Khan was my agent. I'm not rooting against him. I'm rooting for him, if anything. This is a man who helped me realize the dream of getting to ESPN. Obviously, we don't work together. We haven't worked together since 2020. So there's no malice in the fact that I'm trying to have him on and talk about these things and ask certain questions. But I will admit, just like a lot of other people, and I talk to prominent people in the boxing world, and they all have issues, that leads me to have some questions. And then you kind of see some of the things that were said and how that all went down last week. You can't help but have issues. And obviously we know about the UFC, and we know about the history, and we know about the settlement and the class action lawsuits. And I think you would be rather naive not to put two and two together. The times they have changed. People have long said that boxing needs some sort of change. I would argue that boxing is doing pretty well right now, and I don't think that it is an indictment on the sport of boxing. The fact that HBO and Showtime and even, to be honest, ESPN is not in it. Entities come and go. Is it an indictment on the UFC that ESPN is out of the UFC business? I don't think so. It's business. So in any event, fascinating chat. I appreciate his time very much. I really do appreciate his candor and transparency, and hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. I love these chats. Thanks for watching this video. Before you go, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for us. Also, give us a thumbs up, leave a nice comment. These things go a long way. And while you're here, do check out the rest of the channel. We've got live shows and full interviews, clips, and a whole lot more. We're doing big things here, and we appreciate your support very much.